She came to Korea with nothing but her pride and a dream. He ran an empire on fear and silence. And one cup of coffee was about to destroy everything either of them thought they knew about power. Ibukinaliwa Adebayo is a Nigerian cleaner at Seoul's most prestigious hotel. She bows her head every day, not because she is weak, but because she needs the job. But when the fiancé of Korea's most feared Mafia heir deliberately pours hot coffee over her uniform in front of a laughing crowd, something inside Ibukinaliwa refuses to bend. She picks up another cup. She pours it right back. And the man watching from the doorway, cold-eyed and untouchable, feels something he has never felt in 32 years of commanding rooms full of terrified men. Curiosity. Then something far more dangerous. What happens next will drag Ibukinaliwa into a world of assassination attempts, family betrayals, and a love that neither of them is supposed to want. The question is not whether she survives. The question is whether she walks away with her heart intact. If you love fearless heroines, enemies to lovers tension, and stories that refuse to let the strong woman lose, then stay with us. Subscribe right now and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story like this one. This is where we begin. The story. The coffee was still steaming when Ibukinaliwa picked it up. Not because she was angry. Not because she had lost her temper. She picked it up the same way she had done everything in her life since the age of 15, with clear eyes, steady hands, and the quiet, immovable certainty that she owed no one her humiliation. It had started 20 seconds earlier, when Cha Min-seo lifted her own cup from the table in the VIP lounge on the 7th floor of the Daehan Grand Hotel and tipped it slowly, deliberately, with the particular kind of cruelty that only comes from a woman who has never once been told no, directly over the front of Ibukinaliwa's white cleaning uniform. The coffee was hot, not scalding, not enough to burn through fabric to skin, but hot enough to matter. Hot enough to spread across her chest and down toward her waist in a wide, ugly brown stain. Hot enough that the four women seated around the table all flinched slightly before they laughed. Because they did laugh. Of course they did. Min-seo set the empty cup back down with a small, satisfied click, crossed one elegant leg over the other, and looked at Ibukinaliwa the way people look at a stain they fully expect someone else to clean up. "You bumped my chair," Min-seo said simply. Her Korean was sharp and high-pitched, like a note played slightly too hard on a piano. "You spilled my coffee." The room smelled of money. Fresh flowers, warm leather, a perfume that cost more per bottle than Ibukinaliwa earned in 3 months. The four friends were all dressed in the quiet, confident way of women who had never needed to check a price tag. 2 wore watches that caught the light when they moved. One had a bag that Ibukinaliwa recognized from a window she walked past on her way to the subway every morning, the kind of window she had learned not to stare at for too long. Yeo Hanul, the hotel manager, was standing by the far wall. He had been arranging a complimentary fruit display. He was now very still, with the expression of a man trying to become invisible. None of the 4 seated women said anything to stop what had just happened. Bae Eugene, Min-seo's closest friend, had a hand pressed over her mouth. Her eyes were bright with amusement, and she was already composing the story she would tell everyone she knew by nightfall. Ibukinaliwa stood in the center of the room. The wet fabric clung to her chest. She looked down at herself once. Then she looked up. She looked at Cha Min-seo. And she picked up the full cup of coffee sitting untouched at the edge of the table nearest to her, the one that had been set out for a 5th guest who had not yet arrived, and she poured it. Slowly. Directly onto the front of Min-seo's cream-colored Valentino dress. The room did not laugh this time. The room stopped breathing. Min-seo looked down. Then she looked up. Her face moved through disbelief, then horror, then a rage so pure it seemed almost architectural, like something that had been built over years specifically for a moment like this. "What?" Min-seo said, in a voice that was barely a whisper. "Did you just do?" Ibukinaliwa set the cup down. "You bumped your own chair," she said. Her Korean was accented but precise, and she held the woman's gaze without blinking. "You spilled your coffee." The silence after that was the kind that fills a room completely, the way water fills a container, pressing into every corner. Eugene had lowered her hand from her mouth. She was no longer smiling. Hanul had turned away from the fruit display and was now staring at Ibukinaliwa with the expression of a man watching a building collapse in slow motion, fully aware he can do nothing to stop it and uncertain whether he should run. What none of them saw, because none of them were looking at the right place, was the man standing in the half-open doorway at the far side of the lounge. He had stopped there a minute earlier, intending to enter. He had stayed because something about the scene in front of him had made him pause. That precise moment when the cleaner looked up from the ruined front of her uniform and reached, without hesitation, for the other cup. Kong Seorian stood with one hand resting lightly against the door frame and watched. He was 32 years old. He had inherited his father's face, all hard lines and controlled expression, and his father's silence, the particular kind that made every person in a room feel watched even when he was looking at something else. He wore a dark suit with no tie, and a single ring on his right hand, a flat black stone set in white gold that people in certain circles recognized immediately, and people outside those circles never asked about. He had come to the 7th floor lounge to meet Mincio for the lunch she had arranged. His right-hand man, Meg Jaiwan, was 2 steps behind him in the corridor. He did not enter the room. He watched Abukanaliwa set the cup down. He watched her hold Mincio's gaze. He watched the particular quality of her stillness, not the stillness of fear, but of someone who has made a decision and is now waiting on the other side of it. Jaiwan leaned forward slightly and murmured near his ear, "Should I stop this?" "No," Seorian said. He did not look away from the woman in the stained uniform. Mincio had risen from her chair. She was taller than Abukanaliwa by several centimeters, and she used every millimeter of that height now, pulling herself up and forward in the way people do when they want to remind a room how much space they are permitted to occupy. "Do you know who I am?" Mincio asked. "You are the woman who poured coffee on me," Abukanaliwa said. "And now you are the woman who has coffee poured on her. We are even." "We are not even." Mincio's voice had climbed into a register that made one of the other women at the table shift uncomfortably in her seat. "I will have you fired. I will have you deported. Do you understand me? I will make sure you never work in this country again. I will call the immigration office myself." Abukanaliwa said nothing. She looked at the woman in front of her with an expression that was not defiance exactly, and not fear, and not contempt. It was something quieter and more difficult to name. It was the face of a woman who has already weighed everything she has to lose and decided that some things cost more than a job. "Hanul SSI," Mincio said, spinning toward the manager. "Fire her. Right now. Fire her, and call security to remove her from this building." Hanul opened his mouth. He closed it again. He looked at Abukanaliwa, and then he looked at the doorway, because some instinct developed from years of managing a hotel where powerful people came and went, made him check who was watching. He saw Seorian. Hanul's face changed. Mincio noticed. She turned toward the door. Seorian stepped into the room then, unhurried, the way he moved through every space in his life, as though the room had been arranged around him rather than the other way around. Jaiwan followed him in and took up a position near the wall with the quiet efficiency of a man who had spent a decade learning exactly how far back to stand. "Seorian." Mincio's voice shifted. The fury did not disappear, but it reorganized itself, pulling on a different coat. "Did you see what she did? She attacked me. She needs to be removed immediately. I want her fired and I want her arrested." Seorian looked at Mincio. Then he looked at Abukanaliwa. Abukanaliwa looked back at him. She did not look away. She did not bow her head. She held his gaze with the same steadiness she had held Mincio's, and something in that, some refusal to perform smallness in front of his face, made a muscle near his jaw move once. "What is your name?" he asked her. The question landed in the room strangely. No one had expected it. "Abukanaliwa Adebayo," she said. He repeated it, not mangling it, not shortening it, but saying it carefully, the way a person says a name they intend to remember. "Where are you from?" "Nigeria." He nodded once, as though she had confirmed something he had already suspected. Then he turned to Hanul. "She keeps her job." Mincio made a sound. It was not quite a word. It was the sound a person makes when the floor does something the floor is not supposed to do. "Seorian." "She keeps her job," he said again, the same tone, the same volume, with the slight, terrible emphasis of a man who does not repeat things because he enjoys repetition, but because he has decided that this particular point requires no further interpretation. "She poured coffee on me. You poured coffee on her first." The silence this time was different from the previous one. It had a weight to it. It had the specific quality of a silence that people will be discussing for the rest of the week in tones that range from disbelief to fascination. Mincio stared at him. Eugen was looking at her phone with the careful studiousness of someone who desperately wants to be somewhere else. The other 2 women at the table had developed an intense interest in their water glasses. Seorian turned back to Abukanaliwa. "You may go back to work," he said, not dismissively, simply, like a fact being stated. Ibu Kanaliwa looked at him for one more moment. It was not gratitude in her eyes, and it was not hostility. It was assessment, clear and direct and unashamed. And then she turned, picked up her cleaning cart from where she had left it by the door, and walked out. Seorian watched her go. Jaiwan, 2 steps behind him, watched Seorian. Seorian. Minsio's voice had dropped. The performance was gone now. This was something rawer and more dangerous. I am your fiancé. I am telling you that woman assaulted me in front of 4 witnesses, and you are standing in this room, defending her. I am not defending her, Seorian said, turning toward the table and sitting down with the unhurried ease of a man unbothered by the emotional weather of the room. I am keeping a competent employee in her position. There is a difference. She is a cleaner. Yes. She is a foreign cleaner who attacked me. She responded to what you did to her. He picked up a menu from the table. I suggest you change your dress. Lunch is in 20 minutes. Mincio stood for a moment longer, and the expression on her face was the kind that people who know powerful women learn to recognize and file away carefully. It was not the expression of someone who has accepted defeat. It was the expression of someone who has shifted the battle to a different field. She picked up her bag and walked toward the restroom, and when she passed Eugen's chair, the 2 women's eyes met for a single second that contained an entire conversation. Jaiwan waited until the restroom door closed before he stepped closer to Seorian's chair. That may cause complications, he said quietly. Seorian turned a page of the menu. Most things do. She will go after the woman. I know. Then why? Because, Seorian said, setting the menu down and looking at the door through which Ibu Kanaliwa had exited. I have sat in rooms full of people who know exactly how much I can do to them, and they have all smiled at me without stopping. I have never once seen someone do what she just did. He paused. That is interesting to me. Jaiwan said nothing for a moment. Then, interesting is expensive. Seorian smiled. It was small and controlled, and it did not reach his eyes in the way most people would recognize. But for Jaiwan, who had known him for 11 years, it was the equivalent of another man laughing. Everything interesting is. Ibu Kanaliwa went back to work. She cleaned the second-floor corridor. She refilled the towel dispensers in the women's restroom on the 4th floor. She wiped down the brass fittings on the lobby elevator doors with the particular concentration she gave everything she did, because she had learned early in life that the only way to do a thing was to do it completely, and because focusing on the work in front of her was the most effective way to manage the fact that her hands had been shaking slightly since she walked out of that lounge. Not because she was afraid. She did not do afraid easily. She had come from a home where afraid was a luxury nobody could afford, where the roof leaked in 3 places every rainy season, and her mother cooked dinner at 7 in the evening and again at midnight for the children who had not yet eaten, and you learned in a home like that to put fear in a box and get on with things. Her hands were shaking because she was angry. Specifically, she was angry in the way she always got angry, deep and cold and very quiet, the kind of anger that takes up residence in your chest and refuses to leave. She pulled out her phone during her break and called her younger sister. Ibu. Folake's voice, warm and slightly breathless, came through the small speaker. You're calling in the middle of your shift. I had a moment. What kind of moment? Ibu Kanaliwa sat on the low wall behind the hotel's service entrance, where the delivery trucks came and went and the kitchen staff took their smoke breaks. The Seoul afternoon was gray and mild, and from where she sat she could see a slice of the Han River between 2 buildings if she turned her head at the right angle. A woman poured coffee on me, she said. A pause. Are you burned? No. The uniform is ruined. Ibu. What did you do? The slight dread in Folake's voice was justified, and Ibu Kanaliwa recognized it with the particular affection you have for a sibling who has learned your patterns well. I poured it back, she said. The silence from Lagos was extremely eloquent. She was a guest, Ibu Kanaliwa said, before her sister could find words. A rich one. She did it on purpose, Folake. In front of people. To laugh. I know, Folake said. I know she did. But Ibu. I know. You need that job. I know. Tons school fees. I know. Her voice was firm, but not hard. I know all of it. I have not forgotten any of it. But I could not let her do that, and stand there with my head down. I could not. Another silence. Then Folake said quietly, Did they fire you? No. The man, her fiancé, told the manager to keep me. Her fiancé defended you. I would not call it that. He simply said I keep my job. Ibu Kanaliwa frowned at the river slice between the buildings. He is strange. Strange how? He looked at me like I was something he was trying to figure out. Ibu. Folake's voice had acquired a new tone, something between warning and curiosity. Who is this man? His name is Kong Seorian. The silence this time was different from all the previous silences. Ibukanaliwa Adebayo, her sister said slowly. Do you know who that is? He said he owns the hotel. He does not own the hotel. Folake's voice was very careful now. He owns half the city. People here talk about his family. He is not just a businessman, Ibu. The Kong family is, she stopped. You need to be very careful. I am always careful. No. You are always brave. That is different. Be careful. Ibukanaliwa looked at the gray sky above Seoul. She thought about the man in the doorway, and the way he had said her name like he was placing it somewhere specific in his memory, and the way he had looked at her when she turned to leave. I will be fine, she said. She went back to work. She was not fine for long. The first thing happened 3 days later. She arrived at the hotel to find that her locker had been broken into. Nothing was missing, but everything inside had been moved in the small, deliberate way that says someone was here and they want you to know it. Her spare uniform was on the wrong hook. Her phone charger was unplugged and placed on the bench. A photograph of her family, tucked into the inside cover of a notebook, was on top of the notebook instead of inside it. She stood in front of the open locker for a moment. Then she closed it, changed into her work uniform, and went to find Hanul. Hanul listened to her with the expression he had been wearing for 3 days now, the expression of a man managing a situation that is significantly above his comfort level. I will look into it, he said. There are cameras in the locker room corridor, she said. I would like to see the footage. Hanul looked uncomfortable. That is a security matter. I would need to. Hanul SSI, she said, and her tone was respectful but precise. Someone entered my locker. I have a right to know who. He reviewed the footage that afternoon. He came to find her while she was cleaning the 3rd floor. There was a maintenance request log for that corridor yesterday evening, he said, not quite meeting her eyes. The camera was offline for 40 minutes. 40 minutes, she repeated. It may have been a technical issue. She looked at him. It may have been. She called Folake that night and did not mention the locker. She talked about the weather and about Tun's exams and about a Korean drama she had been watching on her phone before bed. She was very good, by now, at deciding what to carry alone. The second thing happened 1 week after that. She was summoned, through a formal note delivered to the staff room by a young man in a suit who introduced himself only as a representative of Mr. Kong, to meet with Zorian in a private meeting room on the 9th floor at 6 in the evening, after her shift ended. She read the note twice. She put it in her locker. She finished her shift, changed into the spare set of clothes she kept in her bag, which were unremarkable and clean, dark jeans, and a plain navy blouse, and she took the elevator to the 9th floor. The meeting room was not a meeting room in the ordinary sense. It was a sitting room, furnished with the kind of understated precision that costs more than ornate things because it requires genuine taste. There was a low table with 2 chairs, a window that showed the city in the pale gray of evening, and Kong Seorian, standing with his hands in his pockets looking at the window when she entered. Jaiwan was there too, standing near the far wall, and he looked at her with the focused, measuring quality of someone completing a background check in real time. Seorian turned when she entered. Sit down, he said. Not rudely. Simply. She sat. She did not arrange herself into smallness. She sat the way she sat everywhere, upright, taking up the space she occupied without apology. He sat across from her. He studied her for a moment without speaking. She studied him back, which she could see slightly surprised him, though nothing on his face moved enough to call it surprise. How long have you worked here? He asked. 14 months. Where did you work before this? A restaurant in Itaewon. Before that, a cleaning company that serviced office buildings in Gangnam. How long have you been in Korea? 2 years and 3 months. He was quiet for a moment. Why Korea? Because I could get a work visa, she said. Because the money converts well when I send it home. Because there was a language program I enrolled in, and the certificate I have is accepted here for certain work categories. He nodded. Your Korean is good. I studied hard. I know. I had someone look at your employment file. He said it without apology, matter-of-factly, the way people tell you things when they want you to understand that they consider it their right to know. You have not had a single complaint in 14 months. Your supervisor describes you as the most thorough person on the cleaning staff. She said nothing. Someone broke into your locker, he said. She was quiet for a moment. Hanul SSI told you. Hanul SSI tells me everything about my hotel. He held her gaze. It was Mincio's people. A woman on the catering staff who works for Mincio's family company was given access to that corridor. Ibukanaliwa absorbed this. "What do you want from me?" she asked. The directness seemed to interest him the same way it had in the lounge. "I want to know if you are going to be a problem." "How would I be a problem?" "By doing something that requires me to intervene again. By attracting attention in ways that affect this hotel or my business." "I came to work," she said. "I have only ever come to work." "Your fiancé made me a problem." "Yes," he said. "She did." He said it evenly, without the defensive edge that most men use when someone criticizes the woman in their life. He said it like a man acknowledging a fact about the weather. She looked at him. "Are you going to break off the engagement?" The question surprised him enough that the controlled line of his mouth shifted by a fraction. "That is not your business. You asked me if I am going to be a problem. I am asking you a relevant question. If she stays your fiancé, she will continue to target me. You should know that will not make me leave." He was very still for a moment. "You are not afraid of her." "I am afraid of losing my job," she said honestly. "I have 2 younger siblings whose school fees I pay. I have a mother who is ill. I am afraid of all the real things. I am not afraid of a woman who has never had a reason to develop character." Something shifted in his expression. Not dramatically. Not the way it shifts in films, where the hard man suddenly discovers softness and his whole face changes. It was smaller than that, and more real, the faint movement of a man encountering something he had not prepared for. "I will manage Mincio," he said. "I will manage myself," she replied. They looked at each other across the low table. "Is that everything?" she asked. "For now." She stood. She picked up her bag. She walked to the door, and then she stopped, because something made her stop, some instinct she could not entirely name, and she turned back. "Why did you keep me employed?" she asked. The honest reason. He was quiet for long enough that she thought he would not answer. Then he said, "Because I wanted to see what you would do next." She held his gaze for a moment. Then she left. In the elevator going down, she pressed her back against the wall and breathed. Her heart was beating faster than it should have been. She pressed her hand flat against her sternum and told herself it was the tension of the meeting and nothing else. Jaiwan found Seorian still standing at the window after she left. "She is not what I expected," Jaiwan said. "No," Seorian agreed. "This is going to be complicated. Everything is complicated." This specifically. Jaiwan moved to stand beside him, looking out at the city. "Mincio is already speaking to her father. Director Cha is calling your uncle tonight." Seorian turned from the window. "Then I will speak to my uncle first." "And the woman?" "Adebayo." Seorian picked up his jacket from the chair. "She is under the hotel's protection, which means she is under mine. Make that clear to anyone who needs it made clear." Jaiwan watched him put the jacket on. "You know what this looks like." "I know what it is," Seorian said. "I am protecting a member of staff from being harassed by a guest. That is a straightforward business matter." Jaiwan said nothing, which was his particular method of expressing that he did not believe a word of it. The campaign against Ibukanaliwa, when it came, was methodical. Mincio did not work in crude ways. She had been raised in a world where the most effective attacks are the ones that look like accidents, coincidences, natural consequences. She was, at 29, extremely talented at this. A rumor began circulating among the hotel staff that Ibukanaliwa had been caught stealing from a guest's room. No one could say exactly who had started it or when, but it moved through the break room and the staff changing areas with the particular efficiency of a story that people enjoy repeating. Hanul called her in. She sat across from him and looked at him steadily while he told her, with genuine visible discomfort, that the allegation had been made anonymously. "Check the camera logs for every room I have cleaned in the past 2 weeks," she said. "Cross-reference them with the inventory logs. Check my bag when I leave every day if you want to. I have nothing to hide." Hanul did check. He found nothing, which he told her with the slightly deflated expression of a man who had not entirely believed she was guilty, but had not entirely believed she was innocent either, and the certainty in either direction had eluded him. "There will be no further action," he told her. "Good," she said. The second move was more personal. Eugen, Mincio's friend, began appearing at the hotel in ways that were not accidental, at times and in places that aligned with Ibukanaliwa's shift. She never spoke to Ibukanaliwa directly. She simply watched, with phone in hand, filming in ways that were just barely deniable, and she posted on social media about the hotel, carefully worded posts that managed to imply, without stating that the cleaning staff was memorable for reasons other than their efficiency. It was the third move that was serious. 3 weeks after the coffee incident, Ibukanaliwa was approached in the staff car park as she walked to the bus stop at the end of her evening shift. 2 men she did not recognize fell into step on either side of her. They did not touch her. They did not need to. They simply walked in close, and one of them said, in Korean, "You should apply for a job somewhere else. There are good cleaning positions in Incheon, far from Seoul." She kept walking. "I like Seoul," she said. "You might like it less soon," the second man said. She did not run. She walked at her regular pace to the end of the street, turned the corner, stepped into the lit entrance of a convenience store, and stood there for 3 minutes until she was certain they had not followed. Then she took out her phone and called the one number she had not expected to be calling. It rang twice. "Adebayo-ssi," Seorian's voice said. "2 men followed me from the hotel," she said, keeping her voice level. "They told me to move to Incheon." A pause. "Where are you now?" She gave him the name of the convenience store. "Stay there," he said. "Do not leave." Jaewon arrived in 14 minutes in a black car. He did not say much. He said, "Mr. Kong asked me to bring you somewhere safe tonight." And she got in the car because the alternative was waiting alone on a street in the dark, and she was practical enough to know the difference between accepting help and surrendering control. They went to a building in Gangnam that looked, from the outside, like an ordinary residential tower. The lobby was quiet and staffed by 2 men who looked at Jaewon and stepped aside without a word. She was taken to an apartment on the 18th floor that had clearly been prepared recently, with food in the refrigerator and clean towels in the bathroom, and the particular unlived quality of a space kept ready for emergencies. Seorian arrived 40 minutes later. He came in still in his suit from whatever he had been doing that evening, and he sat across from her at the kitchen table and put his phone face down on the surface between them, which she had noticed was something he did when he wanted to indicate that a conversation had his full attention. "Tell me exactly what they said," he said. She told him. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, "They were Minseo's father's men. Director Cha has decided to involve himself. Because of me?" "Because of me," he said, and there was something in the way he said it. Not quite admission, not quite apology, but honest. "My response to the incident in the lounge embarrassed Minseo. Director Cha views it as a slight to his family." She looked at him. "And you? How do you view it?" He was quiet for a moment. "I view it as something that was the right thing to do." "That is the first time you've said something that sounds like it came from a person rather than a company statement," she said. His mouth moved in that small way again. Not quite a smile. Adjacent to one. "You are very direct. You know this already." "Yes." She looked at the table between them. "Seorian SSI," she said, using his name for the first time, and she saw him register it. "I need you to understand something. I am grateful for what you are doing, but I cannot allow my life to become a problem that you manage. I came here with nothing, and I built something small but mine, and I will not have it be something that happens to me. I am not trying to manage you," he said. "You are. You are keeping me safe, which I appreciate, but you are making decisions about my safety without asking me what I want." He studied her. "What do you want?" "I want to know everything. Everything about who is targeting me and why and what the options are. I want to participate in decisions that affect my life." He was quiet for long enough that she thought she had pushed too far. Then he said, "All right." It was 2 words, but the way he said them, with the particular weight of a man who does not offer things lightly, made them feel like considerably more. He told her about the Kong organization over the next 2 hours, more than he had told most people outside it, and she listened the way she listened to everything, completely, without performing reactions, storing the information carefully. He told her about his father, who had built the syndicate over 30 years into something that touched 5 industries and 2 countries. He told her about the arrangement with Director Cha, an alliance of power and money that predated both him and Minseo. He told her about the internal pressure from men within his own family who watched his every decision for weakness. "And the engagement?" she asked, when he stopped. "Is an arrangement," he said. "It has been since I was 24. Minseo knows this. I know this. We have an understanding about what it is and what it is not. She does not behave like a woman who has an understanding," Ibukanayua said. "No," he said. "She does not." They sat in the quiet of the kitchen. The city moved below the windows in its ordinary nighttime way. Taxis and late pedestrians, and the particular blur of Seoul after 10, and it was strange, Ibukanayua thought, how normal it felt to sit here with this man who ran something that frightened her if she thought about it directly, and to talk to him like this, like 2 people who had decided to be honest with each other, which was not something she had expected from this situation. "I need to call my sister," she said. "Of course." He stood. "The room at the end of the corridor is yours for tonight. There is a car to take you to the hotel in the morning." He turned to leave, and she said, "Seorian SSI." He turned back. Thank you, she said, for being honest. He looked at her for a moment. You make it difficult to be anything else, he said. Mincio came to the hotel the next morning. She came alone, which was unusual. She wore no expression at all, which was more unusual. She found Ibukanaliwa on the second-floor corridor at 9 in the morning, and she stood in front of her cart, and she said, I want to speak to you. Ibukanaliwa stopped. She held the mop handle and looked at the woman in front of her. I know where you are living, Mincio said. The apartment in Itaewon. I know you send money home every month. I know about your brother Tund and your sister Folake and your mother's medical treatment. She paused. I know about the work visa extension you applied for 3 months ago that has not yet been approved. Ibukanaliwa felt the particular chill of someone who understands they have been studied. I can make the visa extension disappear, Mincio said. My family has contacts in the Immigration Bureau. I can also ensure it is approved by next week, with a 3-year term. I am giving you a choice. What is the choice? Ibukanaliwa asked. Leave Seoul. Go to Busan, Daegu, anywhere outside this city. Resign from this hotel. Do not contact Seorian again. Mincio's voice was absolutely flat, stripped of everything except the bare architecture of what she was saying. Do this, and I will make sure your visa is approved. Your family receives a payment equivalent to 6 months of your salary, and no one touches you or yours. The corridor was empty. Somewhere below them, the hotel moved through its morning routines, lobby coffee, and early checkouts, and the precise choreography of a machine running smoothly. Ibukanaliwa was quiet for a moment. You are afraid, she said. Mincio's expression flickered. I beg your pardon. You are afraid. A woman who is not afraid does not come alone to a corridor to bargain with a cleaner. She sends people. Ibukanaliwa tilted her head slightly. You came alone because you do not want Seorian to know about this conversation, which means you are not certain he would support it. Mincio's face had gone very still. Do not overestimate yourself. I am not overestimating myself, Ibukanaliwa said. I am reading the situation. You are not offering me a deal because you are generous. You are offering me a deal because you have decided that direct force has not worked and you need to try something else. She looked at Mincio steadily. I am not leaving. You will regret this. Possibly, Ibukanaliwa said. But I will regret it as myself, in the life I chose. Not as someone who ran away because she was frightened into it. They stood facing each other in the empty corridor, 2 women with nothing in common except the fact that the same man had, in his different ways, changed the course of each of their lives. Mincio turned and walked away without another word. Ibukanaliwa watched her go. Then she picked up the mop and continued cleaning. The secret that Mincio had found took another 2 weeks to surface. Jaiwan was the one who told her. He came to find her on a Tuesday afternoon with an expression she had not seen on him before, tight and careful and almost apologetic. There is something you should know, he said, before it comes out in a way you cannot control. They sat in the small staff break room, and Jaiwan told her that Mincio had found, through a contact in Nigeria, information about the circumstances under which Ibukanaliwa had left Lagos. Specifically, that she had been accused, 2 years earlier, of stealing from the accounting firm where she had worked as a junior administrator. The accusation had been made by her employer's son. The case had been closed without charge, the evidence having been found insufficient, but the allegation existed on record. She is planning to share this with the Korean press, Jaiwan said. She has a journalist contact. The story will be framed as an expose about the hotel's background check procedures. Your name, your face, the allegation. Ibukanaliwa sat very still. It was false, she said, not defensively, as a statement of fact. I know, Jaiwan said, and the simplicity of his certainty surprised her. I checked. She looked at him. I have contacts in Lagos, he said. It took 3 days. The employer's son made the allegation 2 weeks after you refused his advances. 3 of your colleagues provided written statements that were never reviewed. The case was closed not because the evidence was insufficient, but because the investigator was paid. He paused. I have the documentation. She was quiet for a long time. Outside the small window of the break room, Seoul went about its business. You checked, she said finally. Mr. Kong asked me to, Jaiwan said, when the rumor first reached us. She thought about Seorian asking Jaiwan to find the truth. She thought about what that meant, practically, in the context of a man who ran an organization built on information and power, and she thought about what it cost him to deploy those resources on her behalf. He did not tell me, she said. No, he did not want you to feel like it was surveillance. Jaiwan looked at his hands briefly. He was trying to help without it feeling like control. She thought about what she had said to Seorian in the apartment kitchen, about not wanting her life to become something that happened to her. She thought about a man who had heard that and adjusted, imperfectly but sincerely, and sent someone to find the truth instead of making assumptions, and she felt something shift in her chest, small and irreversible. What does he plan to do about Mincio and the journalist? She asked. That depends on you, Jaiwan said. He will not move without you knowing what the plan is. She went to Seorian that evening. She found him in his office on the 11th floor of a building in central Seoul that did not advertise what it contained. Jaiwan had brought her, and she had walked through corridors where men who had the specific quality of people trained to be dangerous stepped aside for her without comment, which told her things about how Seorian had described her to his organization. He was behind a desk that was conspicuously clear of decoration, and he stood when she came in, which she had not expected. Jaiwan told you, he said. Yes. She sat in the chair across from him, and he sat back down. You found the truth. I found the truth. You did not tell me. No. He met her eyes. I should have. I was trying to handle it without alarming you. That was not what we agreed. The honesty was immediate and uncomplicated, and she realized, sitting there, that this was one of the particular things about him, that he did not dress accountability in performance. He simply said the thing. What do we do about Mincio? She asked. I need to end the engagement, he said. The words sat between them. Not because of this, he said, before she could speak. Or not only because of this. It is wrong to continue something that is a transaction for both of us, but which she has invested in emotionally in ways I never intended and never addressed honestly. That is my failure, not hers. Ibukanaliwa looked at him. You sound almost like a person who has been thinking about this for a while. Since the corridor, he said. If I am honest. The coffee incident. Yes. She was quiet for a moment. Ending the engagement will create problems with Director Cha. Yes. Problems that could affect your organization. Your family's alliances. Yes. And you are prepared for that. He held her gaze. My father built this organization on the principle that the most dangerous people are the ones who cannot be intimidated because they have nothing left to lose. He was wrong about one part of it. The most dangerous people are the ones who have something worth protecting and know exactly what it is. She understood what he was saying. She let it sit. I am a cleaner, she said, not apologetically, not as a disclaimer, simply as a fact being placed on the table alongside all the other facts. You are a woman who poured coffee back, he said, in a room full of people who had spent their entire lives learning not to. She did not say anything for a long moment. Outside his window, Seoul sprawled in all directions, a city of extraordinary scale and complexity and history, and she was a woman from Lagos who had come here with savings, a cleaning qualification, a language certificate, and the absolute refusal to disappear. If you end the engagement, she said, Director Cha will not stop. He will go after both of us. I know. And your uncle? Jaiwan told me your uncle has been pressuring you. My uncle will be managed. Seorian SSI. She leaned forward slightly. I need you to look at me and tell me honestly that you are not doing this because of some impulse that feels important right now, but that you have genuinely thought through. Because I do not want to be the reason you burn something that took your family generations to build. He looked at her. He took a moment, and she respected the moment. The fact that he did not rush to reassure her, that he sat with the weight of the question. My family built this through ruthlessness and fear, he said. It has survived because no one has dared challenge it. But I have sat in that organization for 10 years, and I have never once made a decision that was mine. Every alliance, every arrangement, every agreement has been my father's architecture. The engagement with Mincio, the relationship with the Cha family, the route the organization takes. He paused. You are the first thing I have encountered in 10 years that made me ask what I actually want. Not what is strategically advisable. What I want. And what do you want? She asked. He looked at her across the desk with the directness she had come to recognize as the most unguarded thing about him. Something that surprises me, he said. Something I did not plan for. Her heart did something complicated that she acknowledged and then set aside for later. All right, she said. Then we deal with Mincio together. What followed was not simple, and it was not quick, and it was not without cost. Seorian called Director Cha to a meeting and ended the engagement with Cha Mincio in terms that were formal and final. The details of what was said in that meeting were not shared widely, but the outcome was understood throughout the Kong organization and the Cha family network within 48 hours. Director Cha severed the business alliance. Three of Seorian's uncle's associates used the rupture as an occasion to question Seorian's leadership, which was the thing his uncle had been maneuvering toward for 2 years. Seorian moved against his uncle with the particular efficiency of a man who has spent 10 years learning an organization from the inside and knows exactly where each lever is. The journalist who had been going to run Mincio's story received, through channels that were untraceable, the complete documentation Jaiwan had assembled about the Lagos allegation, including the statements from Ibukanalia's former colleagues, the record of the paid investigator, and the timeline of events that followed her refusal. The story that ran was not about a Nigerian cleaner's past. It was about the practices of certain wealthy Korean families in using institutional channels to target foreign workers who attracted their displeasure. Ibukanaliwa did not read the article when it published. Jaiwan sent her the link. She looked at it for a moment and then set her phone down. She was in the hotel corridor. She had 3 more floors to clean. She picked up the mop. Hanul found her at the end of her shift. He looked like a man who had been through a significant reorientation of his understanding of the world. "Mr. Kong has asked me to offer you a new position," he said. "Guest Relations Coordinator. It is a significant pay increase and comes with a housing supplement." She looked at him. "Did he ask you to present it as your idea?" Hanul blinked. Yes. She smiled, which was something Hanul realized he had not seen her do in 14 months of working with her, and it changed her face considerably. "I accept," she said. "But tell him he does not have to do things indirectly. I prefer the direct version." Hanul delivered this message and reported back that Seorian's response had been, simply, "Tell her I know." Mincio did not vanish. People like Mincio do not vanish. They recede and recalibrate. She left Seoul for 3 months, going first to Jeju and then to Paris, and the social media posts she made during this period told a story of a woman performing unbotheredness with the particular effort of someone who is very bothered indeed. Yujin made 2 attempts to continue the harassment campaign on her behalf, both of which were quietly neutralized by Jaiwan with a precision that suggested he found it more interesting than troublesome. When Mincio returned to Seoul, she was different. Not softer, exactly, but something had been taken out of her, the specific certainty of a person who has always been protected by proximity to power and has discovered that proximity has a radius. She did not come to the hotel again. There was one moment, 3 weeks after her return, when she and Ibukanaliwa passed each other in the lobby of a different hotel across the city, at an event they had both attended for different reasons. They stopped. The world continued around them. Mincio looked at her for a long moment. "He has never looked at anyone the way he looks at you," she said. It was not said with warmth, but it was said without venom, which from this woman was its own kind of concession. "I want you to know I am aware of that." Ibukanaliwa looked back at her. "I am sorry for the parts that were genuinely painful," she said. "I am not sorry for the parts that were necessary." Mincio looked at her for a moment longer. Then she walked away. On the evening that Seorian asked her to accompany him to a formal dinner where he would be introduced to the heads of 3 partner organizations in his new capacity, the capacity his father had formally transferred to him at the conclusion of the internal restructuring, she stood in front of the mirror in the apartment that was now genuinely hers, in the building in Gangnam, and she called Folake. "He is taking me to a dinner," she said. "With the Mafia people?" "Folake. I'm just asking. Are they Mafia people?" "They are businessmen," Ibukanaliwa said. "Complicated businessmen." Ibu. Folake's voice was warm and careful, the voice she used for the important things. "Are you happy?" She looked at herself in the mirror. She was wearing a dress that she had chosen herself, a deep green that worked with her skin in a way that made her feel like herself rather than like someone dressed up. Her hair was natural and pinned back, the way she wore it when she was not trying to be anything other than what she was. She thought about the day 14 months ago, standing in front of a bus board in Lagos with her acceptance letter for the language program, and her savings and the address of the apartment she had found online, and the fear she had carried for the first 6 months in Seoul that had gradually, and then rapidly, become something she no longer recognized. "I think yes," she said. "I think that is what this is." "Be careful with it," Folake said. "It does not always last." "I know." She took a breath. "But it is here now." Seorian was waiting in the lobby of their building. He was wearing a dark suit with a pale gray tie and the ring on his right hand that she now knew the history of, his grandfather's ring, passed through the family not at weddings, but at transitions, the moment one generation formally surrendered something to the next. He looked up when she came out of the elevator, and the specific quality of his stillness changed the way it had been changing, in moments like this. in these past weeks, something giving slightly in the architecture of him. You look like yourself, he said, which she had come to understand was his particular method of paying a compliment. The observation that you are entirely recognizable, that you have not been altered by proximity to him. That is the idea, she said. He offered her his arm, and she took it, and they walked through the lobby together, and the two men at the door stepped aside, and outside Soul was doing what Soul did, enormous and alive and entirely indifferent to the small, irreversible things happening within it. Are you ready? He asked. She thought about the corridor on the 7th floor of the Daehan Grand Hotel. She thought about the steam rising from a cup of coffee and the silence of a room that had not expected what came next. She thought about a bus station in Lagos and a language program and a cleaning cart and 14 months of carrying things alone and learning a city and building something small but genuine. And she thought about the way this man had said her name the first time, carefully, placing it somewhere specific. I have been ready, she said, since before I met you. He looked at her, and this time, the small movement near his jaw that she had learned to read over weeks and months, the near smile, the controlled acknowledgement of something that moved him, it widened. Just slightly. Just enough. They stepped out into the evening together. This is the story of a woman who came to a foreign country with nothing but her dignity and discovered that dignity, wielded without apology, is the most dangerous thing in any room. It is the story of a man who ran an empire built on fear and met the only person who had never learned to perform it. It is the story of what happens when you refuse to pour the coffee out quietly. It is the story of what happens when you pour it back. If this story moved you, stayed with you, made you think about what you would have done in that corridor, please subscribe, leave a comment below, and give this video a like. Tell us in the comments, when was the last time you refused to bow your head? We read every single one. And if you want to know what happened at the dinner, what Seorian's enemies tried next, and what Ibukanaliwa wrote to her mother the morning after, tell us in the comments, and we will continue the story. Every like on this video brings us one step closer to the next chapter. Stay with us. The best part is still ahead.